Welcome back to part 2 of Wicklow County Matters. We're now going to talk to Rod Coyne about his 1916 commemorative collection. This is my friend Barney, he's the gallery manager. Rod, you've gone from mountainscapes and landscapes to now the 1916 portrait collection. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, it probably seems like a real something completely out of left field compared to my usual work, but that's only looking at my usual work, say in the last 10 or 12 years. Actually, if I go right back, I was telling you about my time I'd spent in Germany, and my first paintings that I did there were actually very politically motivated, and it was looking at the Troubles, and it was about the time just before the ceasefire came through, and I was just re-examining my own history. So that political element was there, and that also meant I was taking on figures and doing figurative work. How that progressed was the landscape moved forward to take over altogether, and I spent a long period just working in landscape, and now I've come back to working with the figure again for this because it is the centenary. It's certainly a very current topic, but it also gives me an excuse to paint figures and heads again. I'll never be a portrait artist. There's so many Irish artists that are so much better at portraiture than I will ever be, but I really enjoy it. I get great satisfaction of it, and I think it's just the fact that, like most people, I'm fascinated by the human condition, and this was a chance to sort of explore the human condition.
What I noticed about your 1916 collection was that you have a historical interest because you focused on some of the figures that have been forgotten about. One in particular was Nurse O'Farrell, who has actually been, pardon the pun, airbrushed out of Irish history. So can you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, well, I think that's really important, and it's been also a great feature of putting together this 1916 portrait collection for myself. It's been a proper learning process. I came at it from a view originally as, say, a Leaving Cert student from 1985 and took everything at face value as it was handed down to us then. Now we see the world with very different eyes, and there's gender quoters out there, and it was important for me to look more at the female aspect that was missing from the Rising itself, and that brought me straight to Elizabeth O'Farrell. And when I found out that she had been literally airbrushed out of history for reasons yet to be discovered, I thought it would be an opportunity for me to celebrate that woman, to celebrate the women in general who were part of the 1916 Rising, and if at all possible to do my little part to airbrush her back in.
Because what's very strange about the situation of O'Farrell, who's actually from Wicklow here as well, I believe she's from Bray, is that there was other famous women like Countess Markievicz and Maud Gonne, and what they were fighting for as well was equality for women too, and that was part of the 1916 idea too, that a new Ireland would have more equality in it.
Absolutely, sure. If you look at the proclamation, it was men and women of Ireland was the first sentiment that was in there, and at the time the women didn't have a vote, so it was a chance for an absolute new beginning, and that was crucial. You get the feeling that was lost in a large part of the century that followed, but I think we're getting back there again now, and that's why, as I said, it was a learning curve for me. I probably started out with the very last millennium view of the world, and my view of 1916 was very male dominated, and what I've tried to do with this collection is to reinstate that female aspect that was crucial for the whole Rising itself.
Even with the portraits here behind us, you've used in dominance orange, blue and black. Can you tell us why you've kind of worked with those colours, as all the portraits have a similar theme running through them?
I was very conscious about the idea that I was only going to have very limited reference material to work from. So there are photographs. Some of them are nice seated portraits, they're well lit, and other ones they're pictures of people on the fly. And these are the same pictures we've been looking at since I did my Leaving Cert, and when kids 50 years before me did their Leaving Cert, they would have looked the same. There was only the same stock of photos, and I was tired of looking at them. They'd become jaded in my eyes, and I thought I really needed to reacquaint myself, but also to reinvent these images. And I saw an opportunity there to give a common thread. So the photographs that I'd had to work from were so disparate, I wanted to give them a common thread. So I said I'll stay with a really tight palette. So I've worked with a raw sienna and a Prussian blue, and I've just stayed within the narrow confines of those, and that thread runs through all of the 16 portrait pictures that will be in the exhibition in Tinnahealy.
speaking of jaded memories of the same pictures, as an artist, would you often be very curious to what Pádraig Pearse actually looks like face on? Because he himself had this kind of embarrassment of a lazy eye, where he always turned of a side profile picture. And would you ever be eager to find out what the man actually looked like, straight on?
Something specific as that, maybe not. I have to smirk though, because I'm a champion of the lazy eye myself, and it's a device I actually use for my painting. It helps me to take 20 steps back from a piece by just closing my good eye and looking at it with my lazy eye. That's completely by and by. What I thought was, when I went to do these pictures, and I wanted to, in the past, if I wanted to be very specific about a portrait, I might have actually projected it and used the projection on the canvas to trace it to get an absolute likeness. But this time I made a conscious decision of not using any technical devices, but literally using my onboard Photoshop to translate the photograph I was looking at in front of me through me onto the canvas, and that way I was going to have a conversation with the person that I was painting. And I hoped that way to get a little feeling of the type of person they were, and a bit more than to get between the lines of what's just written in the history books.
Well, can you tell us a little bit more about, because she's from Wicklow, what you learned about Elizabeth O'Farrell in this journey of yours?
Well, Elizabeth O'Farrell, she sounds to me like she was a hero. She was on the front line. She spent the whole week in the GPO, which must have been, it went down in an inferno at the end of the day. So, and she would have had injured people coming in and out. So she was absolutely at the front line. So she must have been such a brave person and such a strong and stoic person to be able to go through all that. And more importantly, she was a person I'd never heard of until a few years ago. Just so she was never involved in any of the stuff I'd learnt about that period of history. I tried to take, obviously I couldn't take all the participants of this 1916 Rising, and I couldn't take all the female participants, so I tried to take a cross section. So I made sure I had Maud Gaughan in there, who's one of the people that we all know and recognise very clearly. I had Kathleen Clark in there, who represents for me one of the women who stayed at home while the men went out, and they were exactly Clark's wife. So she was crucial as a portion of the female element to the 1916, and then Margaret Skinnender, who was a sniper up on the roofs shooting at British soldiers throughout the time. So that Maud Gaughan is in there, also very much representing that. What would you say, the thespian, but also the whole cultural element that was the very start of the Rising before it became so militaristic. And then somebody very specifically we picked out was Jeannie Wise Power, who would be local to Baltinglass and Tinnahealy, which is where I have the exhibition coming up. So Paul, this is the calendar I was telling you about, and this is actually what started the whole exhibition for me. I was conscious of the centenary coming up years ago, and I'd said I must do something. It was 2014 before I really got started, I have to admit. There's always stuff gets in the way.
Of course.
So we started by creating 12 portraits based on just some key figures. It's impossible to get everybody in there.
O'Reilly.
Well, that's Roger Casement there, and we have Thomas Clark here. And with the calendar that I've created, we deliberately made a point of going for big prints on a very high quality. So it didn't matter if the month had passed. People were getting more than calendar. They're getting a whole collection of prints. So these can be just as easily framed and hung on the wall as a collection in their own right. There's the O'Reilly, and there's Kathleen Clark, as I was telling you about her. I thought she was very interesting as a widow of the Rising, and one of the people who had to stay at home, and not everybody could head out. Pádraig Pearse, I'm very, very interested to hear about his lazy eye there, and that was the reason why he'd be looking away in all of those. I hadn't realised that. But the calendar itself was so successful that the people in Tinnahealy, in the art centre there, the courthouse, they asked me if I wouldn't hang the portraits as part of their specific centenary celebrations. So I agreed to that quite readily. I was delighted to do that. We're going to have the show coming up on the 13th of March. We're opening there, and it'll run for a month. But the originals, I wanted to hold on to those to see if I can use those for a travelling show. So I'm looking to the States to see if we can keep that going. And in the meantime, what I've done is a collection of prints based on those originals. So we will have all those prints there. Each original painting will be there, and each print will be hanging there. And the prints, they're also available. We have them on our website. So I'm very interested in getting the 1916 portrait collection seen as far as possible. So I'd like to actually, I see it as a ready-to-go travelling exhibition. So it'd be great to see it in amongst the communities you have there, in the cities around Australia and in America, everywhere you have a big Irish community.
And what groups would you look at targeting for this collection, or maybe a possible event?
Well, I think it's universal in an Irish sense, as in 1916 centenary. It's all about the birth of the nation. So it should appeal, as far as I'm concerned, to people or to groups who are interested culturally and historically, and and that takes in the whole thing. The same way you have a Cultus here, you'll have Cultus in other cities, and also on top of that, the groups that have an interest in art per se. So people who are interested in painting maybe, or people who are interested in portraiture, that they would like to have a look at that. And I think that'll be a perfect travelling show for them, ready to go. Thanks a million for coming down to the Evoca Studio Gallery. We've really enjoyed having you here. And as a little memento of your visit, I have a DVD to present you with.
Thanks very much,
so you can brush up on your own painting skills.
Rod, appreciate it. We wish you the best of luck here in the Evoca Gallery. We learned a lot here today about art and history. Best of luck in the exhibition. Guys, thanks very much for tuning in to Wicklow County Matters. See you the same time, same place next week.